You're at our webinar today is Career Options in Biotechnology. Today's webinar is being co-hosted by the ASM Education Department. I'm Rachel Horak, a senior specialist in the Department of Education. And it's also being co-sponsored by Scismic, and you're going to meet a representative from Scismic in a minute. During the webinar today, if you have any technical support issues, you're going to message a panelist, ASM:/Shilpa Gadwal, and she will help you do some tech support. If you have content-related questions, you have questions for our panelists, and we're going to have over half the webinar today will be questions time. You're going to put your question into the Q&A box. And we have 3 speakers today from different parts of biotechnology. Be sure to stay for the entire webinar today because near the end of the webinar, we're going to ask for your feedback because this is a new type of programming for ASM. So we really appreciate your feedback. And for those people that graciously give us feedback, you're going to be entered into a raffle, and it's going to be a prize of a group coaching session for further development and getting ready for industry jobs. So do be sure that you stay for the entire live webinar for that opportunity. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Erin McKay, who's our representative from Scismic.
Thank you, Rachel. Hello, everyone. My name is Erin from Scismic. Before we get started, I'd like to quickly thank you all for coming and thank ASM as well for co-hosting this panel with us. We hope you learn about how your microbiology skills can apply to a wide range of industry careers, from research and development to manufacturing to entrepreneurship and more. Scismic itself, I'll briefly explain, is a talent matching platform for the life sciences with the goal of making the industry job search simpler for both applicants and employers. We're always happy to provide any feedback or support if you are considering an industry job search. In fact, as Rachel mentioned, we'll be offering another private workshop on CV writing and interview preparation for industry roles if you're interested. During the post-event survey, you'll have an option to express your interest in this session, and 10 winners will be chosen for an additional course. But now I would like to go to the webinar proper and introduce you to our 3 panelists, Camille, Sarah, and Balaji. Starting with Camille Dielebeck. Camille is an entrepreneur and biotech executive passionate about how microbes can contribute to solutions to our most pressing challenges across the food and agricultural industries. His expertise includes investment, regulatory hurdles, IP, commercialization opportunities, deep technology and industry knowledge, as well as quantitative and analytical skills. Sarah Iverson has over 30 years of experience working in industrial microbiology, including microbial strain improvement, scale-up, fermentation, downstream processing, and technical transfer with a broad range of microbes for pharmaceuticals, biofuels, medical devices, and the bio-based chemicals industries. And we also have Balaji Vasudevan. He has a long history of research experience in agriculture technology, investigating agrobacterium interaction with multiple crop species, including tomatoes, cotton, okra, and many more. His scientific areas of expertise and interests include agrobacterium biology, crop transformation, genome editing, cell biology, phytopathogen and plant microbial assay development, and molecular plant microbe interactions. But they have a lot more to share than just those bios that I've given. So I'd like to now turn it over to the panelists to describe their own career journey, as well as how microbial skills have been impactful not only in their own career, but how they can apply to the industry roles they've experienced. As the panelists are speaking, please keep in mind any questions that you'd like to ask them during the Q&A period, because we'll have plenty of time to get to lots of questions. So we will start with Camille.
Hey everyone, thank you, Erin, for the great intro. It's a real pleasure to join you here today. I have a few slides to share, so I'll try to show you that while I introduce myself, and let me see if I can do that. Let's do it. All right, here we go. All right, so I won't spend too much time describing my current company and what I'm currently building with Affiner, and I want to really focus on the journey that led to, that led me from academia into the industry world. And it's a journey of entrepreneurship, so I'll kind of like focus on that. But in a few words, my current company is a small company based in New York City, and we develop new types of fermented food processes and fermented food products. Mostly for other companies. So we are usually behind the scenes. And we work with a fairly wide range of products. We started working on, fairly common everyday products like coffee and chocolate, which at the farm level, both of them involve a fermentation that is usually not really controlled. And so we worked on leveraging that microbiology to really kind of elevate those products. And later on, we switched towards working really on plant-based proteins and plant-based animal product replacements with a number of partners. And most recently, we've kind of been focusing on closing the loop and working on waste and co-products coming from the food industry and developing fermentation processes to upcycle them into new interesting protein ingredients. So that's my company in a nutshell. I've had a long-standing interest for this tricky transition between academia and the industry. I was in your shoes really not that long ago, but 10, 12 years ago. And I made the jump by starting my own company. So I'll tell you a little bit about that. And I basically wrote a lot about this transition and more broadly the transition into the biotech industry. But in a nutshell, my background is in agronomical engineering. So I've always had a passion about, how do we sustainably grow food. And along the way, I came across microbiology and more specifically synthetic biology, which at the time was kind of like, still new and bubbling. And I mean, obviously there was the long tradition of genetic engineering before that, but there was kind of like a new wave of optimism and new tools and new ways to think about how we could gently modify microbes. And I was quite quickly really passionate about the field and decided to pursue it. But my early research experiences as interns in labs were a bit cliche almost, where I ended up in some of the best labs in France. But the PIs that I was working with were kind of like in their ivory towers, and a lot of the cool things that were happening around me were not actively pushed towards commercialization. So basically, I entered, I decided to still do a PhD to really get the scientific expertise around synthetic biology. But I entered this PhD knowing that I wanted to, leverage this expertise in the industry. And so you can absolutely, do a PhD thinking that, academia is not, the thing that you want to do. And there's a few, tips and tricks that I share that, I learned along the way to make that transition a bit easier. So during my PhD, the first thing that I've kind of like focused on was to work on projects that were not too pointy. I was really interested in kind of like broader platform type projects that were leveraging, the frontiers between different fields. So my main project was in between synthetic biology and a chemistry field called DNA and nanotechnology, where we built these scaffolds inside microbes. It made the cover in Science. You see an image of that. But basically, the idea was to make artificial organelles. And that was really interesting because it enabled me to work with a really wide range of scientists and expertise, from the hardcore molecular biologists and microbiologists to the chemists. At the same time, I tried to keep a foot outside the lab, and I did that a number of different ways. I got really involved with some of the clubs around me. I became the director of the Biotech Club. I'm sure there are similar student-run associations around you, and I think that's a great way to get some experience. I took a summer off to work for a VC firm. I was interested in trying to better understand how specific ideas or specific innovations were chosen and kind of like pushed towards commercialization. And towards the end of my PhD, I actually started to work as a consultant for the Tech Transfer Office. The Tech Transfer Office had a program for students to help them, assess different type of patents that they had in their portfolio and help them, identify suitable commercial partners. And that was like a fantastic experience. That's really kind of, I think, what propelled me towards my first company just after my PhD. Last but not least, I'm talking about group and communities, but I found an entrepreneurship club called Startup Leadership Program, which is a nonprofit that was run by entrepreneurs for the next generation of entrepreneurs. It's kind of like this kind of like peer-to-peer learning, where I kind of like started to get a taste of what it takes to build a company. And so the first big jump that I made was to start a small consultancy, a small consulting firm that was specialized in synthetic biology, and it was really like scientific consulting. A lot of work with tech transfer offices, again with different VC groups that wanted to better understand what these kind of like new biotechnology tools were enabling and how they were going to transform different industries. So I'll stop sharing my screen in a second. Yeah, so this transition was really gradual, right? It's not, you work, on your PhD for like 5 years, and then the last week before defending your thesis, you're thinking about, an industry. I really think that it's a process that you need to think about and build skills and experience as much as possible when possible outside of the lab. This jumping into entrepreneurship was also fairly gradual in that, I already had consulting projects ongoing on the side of my PhD, and it was kind of like a natural transition. And, at some point during my consulting career, one of my main clients became a full-time gig where I became the CSO of an initial microbiology company that was making basically plant probiotics, so microbial inoculants for agriculture. That's when I kind of like went back, hands-on on the science side, and kind of like had to deal with this, interface really hands-on in between, the lab and dealing with clients and the commercialization side. That experience lasted 2 years, and then I created Affineur. And a few words on this company. The way that I founded it was also a bit unusual. The first step was I got money through a small incubator program called Indie Bio, which is actually pretty big now. It's the biggest biotech incubator program in the world. But that was kind of like the jump start. And then fairly quickly, we decided to launch consumer products. So at the time, fermentation, kind of like those new waves of fermented food products, that was still fairly new, and there wasn't that much traction from the industry side. So we went directly to consumer and launched a brand. We did a Kickstarter program campaign to get the word out, and basically these consumer products became kind of like almost a marketing tool for us, whereby with all the noise that they made, they attracted attention, and that's how we bootstrapped the business, and a lot of it has been organic growth, which is I think a bit unusual compared to most companies and startups. But I'll stop here. It's a short intro, and I'll be very happy to answer your questions later on.
Thank you so much, Camille. Lots of good questions to have, not only about entrepreneurship, but consulting and different pathways into entrepreneurship from the bench as well. So we'll turn it over to Sarah.
Sarah, unmute your phone.
I'm not muted.
There you go.
Okay. All right, great. I have a little bit of a different background, and I have a lot of years of experience, but I'm going to talk to you. Well, first I want to thank the organizers for inviting me to participate and putting up with my computer problems, but I really appreciate ASM and Scismic for inviting me to this. I want to tell you a little bit about me, but I also really want to talk about the opportunities that you can find for molecular biologists or microbiologists in biomanufacturing, and also to provide a little bit of resources and tips. So I have been in the field for over 30 years, and when I started out, I got my master's degree, and I did not go on for my PhD. Instead, I got a job. And I want to point out that you don't have to have a PhD to be successful in biomanufacturing or industrial micro. Or it's great if you can do that. It's awesome. But not everybody can. And so if you have a bachelor's degree and you want to try out working, or a master's, it's completely doable. There's jobs out there for everybody. So I got a master's degree and then got my expertise on the job. I have a lot of breadth of experience. I've worked with a lot of different microbes. I've worked with autotrophs and heterotrophs and algae and fungi and yeast. Right now I'm using bacteria. So I work with a lot of different microbes doing strain improvement and production. And I've also made a lot of different products. I work in biofuels, we've made drugs. I work right now making a plastic. I've worked on acids and nutraceuticals with all those different microbes. I'll just give you 2 examples of things that have worked for me. I really wanted to make a product that will be commercial fairly quickly, like in less than 25 years. So in one of my first jobs, I was fortunate enough to work for a small division of a huge company. And they had this biotech division that was screening fungi for enzymes that could be used in the pulp and paper manufacture. And I mean, I never would have thought that I'd work for pulp and paper industry, but it worked out great. I learned fermentation of fungi. I learned how to screen them. We ended up making a product that gets sprayed on wood chips. It's a live fungal form. I learned to formulate the fungus so that it would stay alive in packaging and shipping. And it was a great opportunity. I started out as my first job, a research associate. And when I left there, I was a scientist. And I learned how to manage people and plan a project and finish a job. So that was one example that was great. Another one later in my career, I worked for a startup. And at this startup, the company partnered with a very large multinational food ingredient company. And they wanted us to make their very successful production of an acid more successful. And again, it wasn't coincidentally a fungal organism, but between me and one other person, we took this project and we developed a very unique way to screen for an improved strain when the strain was already 95% efficient, and we needed to get it to 97%. We were successful, and that product then was made, and it was citric acid, and it's put in all of your food ingredients, your soda, your sour gummy worms, and everything. And it was produced in phenomenal scale. 2 points to bring up from that story. I worked at startups and I worked at huge companies. They're both good. One, you might prefer one over another, but you'll figure it out. And I can't really say one is better than another. They're both good. One thing also, though, is that academia versus industry, I had one job that allowed us to publish, and my publication record ends when that job ends. Ever since I left that job, I have not been permitted by my companies to publish. You can patent. You can patent things, But even now, recently, the trends have been not to patent, because when you patent something, you're telling everyone how you do it. And then they try to figure out how to get around it. Things now are kept more as a trade secret. So right now I have no patents and no publications, but lots of trade secrets. So it's something to think about. So that's my background, but in terms of opportunities in the industry for biomanufacturing, there are a lot of opportunities. And just before this talk, I went online to see what's out there right now. And I went to Indeed.com, which is an aggregator of jobs that you can look for. And I just typed in microbiology and biomanufacturing. And there are a lot of opportunities to work in a GMP lab making RNA for virus or for vaccines. There's opportunities to do fermentation development, chromatography, high throughput screening of different organisms, bioinformatics. There's a lot of opportunities and a lot of different levels of positions you could apply for, entry level and higher. So if you're just wondering what's out there and what you like to do, you can go and look and see what jobs are there. Luckily for me, I'm in an area where there's a lot of jobs. But if you're stuck in an area where maybe there's not so many jobs, geographically challenged, I did look to see, are there remote jobs now for microbiologists? It seems like there wouldn't be. But if you don't want to work at the bench, you could find something. There are jobs such as project management, regulatory and quality, and business development, where they want people who know microbiology and can make intelligent decisions about that kind of thing. And those jobs were remote. So that was new to me, and I just wanted to mention it here if somebody has a reason to look for a remote position. They are more out there now post-COVID than there were before. So there is a lot out there, and with each job, I found that I start at one job and I get every bit of knowledge I can get out of that position. And then when that job ends for whatever reason, my next job, I'm more ready for it. So in one example, I worked for a company and they closed. So then I found a new job, and the hot new thing was DNA microarrays. So I went and worked for the DNA microarray company. And I learned everything I could about DNA microarrays. And then when they shut down our division, it was very easy for me to take that information and go to another, even better company and apply that. So always learning all the time on the job has been super. I also wanted to mention some resources just to talk about that. One is, you have to have a good resume. And I know that Scismic can help with that, but definitely your resume has to be perfect because you have all the time in the world to work on it. It should be perfect. Definitely have some people help you review it to make sure there's no spelling mistakes, no spacing mistakes, nothing weird that you just can't catch because you've looked at it too much. The other thing I would mention is a LinkedIn profile. When I'm hiring people, I will look right away at their LinkedIn profile. I want to know, who do they know that I know? Who can I talk to? Maybe we both have not people in common. So it's really important to have a good LinkedIn profile. You can also do a job search in LinkedIn, and you can alert recruiters that you're interested in a job. I have worked at companies where the HR people will go to the company or to LinkedIn and look for people to pull into the company. So that's another way to say, hey, I'm here, I'm good, I know how to do this. And also network with people who are doing what you want, because it's really who you know. And you can meet people through LinkedIn. So I really highly suggest that. And of course, there's always finding a great recruiter, and all the great societies that you can be a member of, especially the ones that are close to where you live and you can meet in person. So I hope that you find this helpful advice, and I'm around for questions and answers later. Thanks.
Thank you, Sarah. It's a lot of great advice, especially I'm glad you mentioned the project manager role as a way, someone who has a lot of scientific knowledge and still wants to potentially contribute to, R&D or the development of a product without actually being at the bench. A good option that you mentioned. Thank you so much. And we will move to Balaji.
Hello, my name is Balaji. First, I would like to thank Erin as well as Rachel from Scismic and ASM respectively for inviting me to share my experience and also talk to students and give some suggestions on how can they approach their job search or transition from an academia to industry. So first, I'll tell my background in a brief nutshell. I am in Biotech for about 20 years. I have worked in both academia as well as industries for about 10 plus 10 years approximately. I'm originally from India, but now I am in the US for more than 15 years. And some of the areas in which I have worked in Biotech are crop transformation, meaning GMOs, making GMOs, and gene editing. Everybody knows that's one of the hot topic right now in every field. And RNAi, which is otherwise called as gene silencing. And we have alternate plant proteins. So I use plant molecular forming to produce proteins of interest using plants as bioreactors. And you have pathogens. I worked in both all the three classes of pathogens like virus, bacteria, and fungus, all the three classes of pathogens. And also one of the other and general molecular biology. There are about 6 or 7 different domains within Biotech that I had the opportunity to work in my different stages of my career. For about 3 or 4 different postdocs and 4 different industry jobs until now. So with that brief introduction, I'll share my slides, wherein I put together some whatever I thought could be relevant for this moment. I hope that's visible to everyone. Yeah. So first, first I want to talk about what in general means Biotech or Agtech or agri-food tech. People use different names, but it's essentially all of them refers to application of all kinds of science, methodologies, tools to essentially alter some living organisms. It could be microbes, it could be plants. In particular, Biotech deals mainly with plants and plant-associated microbes or even animals for the betterment of the humankind. So when it comes to Biotech, particularly, there are many domains or many areas in the Biotech. And I listed out some of the areas which I thought are the right now or the past few years has been the hottest areas where there are jobs and there are also a lot of investors' money going into. Starting from crop transformation, which has been in for about 30 years in the world right now, and genome editing for the past 5 to 6 years from the moment CRISPR-Cas9 came into existence. And you have precision agriculture where data science plays a very important role. And you have biologicals for crop protection. Instead of using chemicals to protect the crops like insecticides and pesticides, you use some good bacteria and good fungi and good nematodes and other microbes that can protect the plant from the pathogens. And of course, the alternate plant-based food in the range of Beyond Meat, Impossible Burger, and the Perfect Day. And there are tons of plant-based and microbial-based companies, mushrooming all throughout the day. And of course, in reducing food waste, that's another important thing. Some companies like Appeal, Cambridge Crops, and Hazel Technologies, they are leading now in terms of reducing the food waste and extending the shelf life of the crops. And of course, soil health. Without a good soil, you cannot grow a plant. So monitoring soil health, companies like Trace Genomics plays a very important role in finding out what are all the components of the soil that is there and what are all the bacteria that is there and all those things. And of course, now indoor farming, otherwise called as aerial as well as vertical farming, huge investment. For example, New Jersey-based Aerofarms is one of the top in the world that grows all the produce in within a big room in a vertical stack. And there are many other industries following Aerofarms, something like Scismic in California recently. it's a quite a interesting area now. And synthetic biology, and that is one of the top area right now, wherein the microbes are altered for variety of purposes. And of course, RNAi, meaning gene silencing, wherein you can replace the use of chemical pesticides and insecticides with just a double strand RNA spray, so that it is environmentally safe. It's a green technology and also very target specific. And of course, the wastewater management. When I go to the next slide, why ag biotech now? Why? What is the reason why people can look forward to ag biotech as a career? Because previously, I know that even with my own experience, I know that 15 years, 20 years back, nobody even cared about Agtech or anything, because they know that there were no job opportunities and the pay was less, and there were so many reasons. It was kind of buried under the ground. But I would like to say this is not the case anymore. For the past particularly 5 years, the amount of investment went into the Agtech has been enormous. That's why I got this information from different sources to validate the point. First is the economy for the next 30 years or even 40 years is going to be bioeconomy, or otherwise called as bio revolution. Like what internet, smartphones, and all those things did for the past 30 years, now the gear is changing towards the bio life sciences. It's a life science bio-based economy. The McKinsey report predicted that based on all the data, it's going to be a $4 billion economy. It's a gold rush. So this is the best time to be in different aspect of life sciences. And next, if you take VC investment in the ag food tech, as you can see the chart, starting 2011, the dollars were nothing. Now you see the amount of dollars that went into the investment in the 2020, it's not even over. Already it's about 12 billion, $14 billion already. See, the amount is increasing every single year. And when it comes to the all protein or cell-based investment, again, where all microbes, plants, and everything is used to get those alternate protein-based food, the amount of investment is enormous. It's increasing day by day, and the cell-based meat industry, for example, is going to capture 40% of the conventional meat industry by 2030. That is the projection. So that means that much amount of investment is being done year after year, month after month, and there are a lot of job opportunities in that area. And another area that's fast growing is agricultural biologicals, meaning the use of microbes for crop protection instead of using chemicals. That industry is fast growing. It's about $7 to $8 billion industry right now, and is projected to go very fast and across the continents. So this chart gives you a snapshot of what's going on in Agtech, and this is the best time to be in the any portion of the ag biotech. And now this is my last slide. This I kind of add an infographic to show that wherein the microbiologists or the people who study microbes in different aspects can come in and look out for different kinds of industries, whichever suits them. It can be in a synthetic biology. For example, Perfect Day is a company, Ginkgo Bioworks, Zymergen, they are all big synthetic biology companies playing a very important role in engineering microbes for a variety of applications. For example, take the case of Perfect Day. It's making the whey protein, the milk protein, whey protein, lactoglobulin without milk. You don't need a milk for lactoglobulin or whey protein anymore. All you need is that they clone the gene into yeast, and then by fermentation, they are able to make now the whey protein, and those whey protein is used in making ice creams. And now they are a very big ice cream or a dairy company right now. And you have all proteins, as I said, Impossible Food is another one good example where they used leg hemoglobin from soybean root, and then for the bleeding in the burger. They just took the gene and engineered yeast for that. I believe it's trichoderma, and then they're using that to extract the protein, the leg hemoglobin, make the burger bleed. And then ag biology is another area where all fungus, virus, bacteria, and everything is used, and people involved in different microbe specialized areas can go into this field. It's a lot of investment, a lot of people, a lot of job opportunities, and biostimulants needed for the better plant growth. And the biological fertilizers, instead of using chemical nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus, now people are using or converting the bacteria into a fertilizer. Like, for example, the company Pivot Bio in California is one of the company that's engineering all microbes into a nitrogen fixing organism so that for the better use of the nitrates. And of course, gene editing is another area because you need CRISPR-Cas9. CRISPR-Cas9 is another produced by bacteria, and there are a variety of strains that is being engineered to produce very good, efficient Cas9 and their variants. So again, microbiologists with that, or molecular microbiologists have a role in that. And microbe-based dairy, this is another industry that's going crazy. This is microbe-based and plant-based cheese, plant-based dairy. Every single day you can see one company coming up. And enzymes for industrial application. This is huge because microbes are engineered to produce various enzymes that are used in a variety of industrial applications. And the leading company in this area is Novozymes. It's a Denmark-based company which has a huge presence in the United States, in the RTP area, North Carolina, and of course other areas too. And you have crop protection enzymes. And not only the enzymes are used in just industrial applications, nowadays they are Novozymes again have partnered with the FMC Corporation, another big crop protection company, to produce enzymes that can be used to protect crops from various diseases. And you have brewing industry, which is very old industry where microbes are potentially used. And you have microbes to do, microbes and plants are used to extract metabolites of interest. And of course, you have the fermentation industry, which is one of the top industry in the all protein category, using microbes to produce all kinds of proteins of interest. There are a lot of leading players in fermentation based industries, and they are used in all kinds of cell-based meat, cell-based seafood, cell-based shrimp, you can name it. So there are potential applications of microbes or microbe related expertise in different industries. I just named a few. There are many more than this. So people can research a little bit, or you can even reach out to me in LinkedIn. I'll be happy to share information, whatever I have and whatever I know. And with this, I stop my presentation. But one advice I want to, or not advice, I will say it's a suggestion that I want to make is that some of the key things that students who are in their BS or MS or even PhD or postdocs on various steps in their career, what they can do in order to switch to from academia to industry is number one, networking. So you need a network. You need to go and reach out to events, reach out to people, and find a network of people involved in your area of interest or even beyond your area of interest. You should have a huge network because 80% of the jobs in industry at various levels are filled by referrals. That means you should know somebody who can speak for you. Otherwise, if you just apply, your application goes to black box because a hiring manager or recruiter just spends 6 seconds in scanning a resume. That means you should be able to catch their eye within those 6 seconds. So that means your resume or CV should stand out. So first is networking, knowing people. That's the number one requirement these days. It doesn't matter how good you are. If you don't know people, you are left behind in the queue. Number two is having a very good LinkedIn profile and being extraordinarily active on LinkedIn, because all jobs, majority of jobs are filled via LinkedIn. And having your presence in LinkedIn, building your network in LinkedIn, and putting a post, writing some kind of scientific post or blogs or whatever it's called on LinkedIn is very, very important. Is the number one requirement. You have to build your connection as much as possible. That's the key. Next, when you are active in LinkedIn, you can connect to the potential the team lead or the group lead in a given department in a given company of your interest, and reach out to them, ask for an informational interview. You just go and meet them. I know they are busy, but sometimes some of them people, they are really good. They will spend some time, at least 15-20 minutes for you to have an informational interview virtually or in person. Go and meet them and find out and express your interest. And number four is don't immediately look for full-time job as your first step. That's good if you get it, but the ideal way is to look for internship. It could be a 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 4 months, 6 months, doesn't matter. Paid, unpaid, doesn't matter. Just get your step into the door of an industry. That's the number one. And go and learn, go and contribute, volunteer. You volunteer, even if it's unpaid or no scholarship or anything, just it's fine. But the amount of experience you gain, that's the key. That will be a stepstone for your next big job in the industry. And number five, of course, is having a very good resume tailored to a given job. You cannot have a single resume and use the same resume for all your 50 or 100 jobs you're applying. and you should tailor your resume, and you should tailor your cover letter to that job. So you should spend some time, on those. And number 6 is your CV should be crisp and short. One page resume is the most preferred. Very rarely, if you have more than one page, you can go up to 2 page, but not more than that. So that is one of the requirements, they put, because nobody has a time to read long pages. As I said, only 6 seconds is spent by a given person, hiring manager or a recruiter, to scan through to a resume. So these are some of the things, I can suggest, and that will kind of help for a transition from academia to industry. I can take many questions in the Q&A session, and I'll be happy to elaborate more on what people want. So again, with this, I thank again Erin and Rachel for for this opportunity to share whatever I know, I learned so far in my journey.
Thank you so much, Balaji. I want to quickly have Rachel hop on to just quickly explain the post-event survey, and then I know we have a lot of questions, and I want to make sure we get to as many as we can.
Okay, great. Hi, everybody. Okay, so this is a brand new type of webinar for ASM Education Department, and we really want your feedback. This is a very important part of being able to run programming like this. So we need to show that this is an important topic and you would like to learn more in future webinars and future events. So into the chat box, Shilpa just posted a link for you all to go fill out our post-webinar survey, and please do that today. And if you do that and give us some feedback, you will be entered into a raffle. And again, it's we're offering 10 people who are attending this live event the opportunity for additional group coaching for preparing your resume for industry jobs. Okay, and that's completely free, just for attending today. Okay, so do be sure to do that today before you log off from all of your work today. And don't forget that a recording for this entire webinar will be posted to your ASM Events online account tomorrow. Okay, so I'm going to turn it back over to Aaron and our speakers for question and answer period.
Great. So we'll start with a question for all panelists. Do you have advice for someone considering a switch to biotech later in their career? So an experienced postdoc who's had many years of research. So something we run into is people saying, with all the academic experience, many years of that, in some ways you're educationally overqualified for some positions, but then in some ways when they want industry experience, you're seen as underqualified.
Okay, I'll start. I have worked at a company where we did hire postdocs. And the situation, as Balaji just said, was a networking situation. If we knew somebody who was doing important work in the area that we were working on and they were an expert at it, we approached them. So it is possible, but you have to know where you're valuable. The work you're doing, who wants that? Why are you doing it? And then meet those people and talk to those people.
Yeah, I can add a little bit on what Sarah said. Because I'm a person who has done 4 industry jobs so far and about 4 postdoc research scientist jobs in the academia phase. So I have a mix of both. So the number one key is that even in the postdoc or in a non-profit institute, wherever you are working, you have to make sure that you are not domain specific. Meaning, for example, take as an ag biotech, there are several domains, as I explained. Not stick to an area where you are more comfortable and then keep on doing in the same area. You have to diversify your skills. You need to be in such a situation that any project, no matter what, you'll be able to adapt, and that flexibility is the key. If we have the diverse skills, your chances, you have better chances of getting getting into industry after that, after all years of postdoc. And also during the postdoc itself, from even from the beginning of the postdoc or even from the beginning of the PhD, you should have a plan. You should have a laid out plan of how you are going to approach and what is your strategy in transitioning from from academia to industry. It doesn't happen all of a sudden. You need to lay your background, like I said, building the network, going to industry events, talking to quite often the people in the industry, know about the recent trends, and post about the industry related events in your LinkedIn. These are all many ways and steps one should follow that will help in the transition from academia to industry.
Yeah, I think those are all great points. I just wanted to add something else about networking, which is absolutely key. But some of us sometimes are either geographically isolated, maybe not in one of the big hubs of biotechnology, or you're in kind of like a subfield that you think might be up and coming, but still there's not that many people around. So you can very much network also from the bottom up, and you should do both, but create local communities of people that share your vision, your passion for the projects that you're working on, or the areas that you're working on, and you can do that locally, and you can do that also globally with LinkedIn. You can create groups, for example, and gather people that share your interests, your passions, your skill sets, and that's the way to get noticed and get your foot on the door.
Yeah. Sure. And one more point I want to add is that this is one of the questions many people ask me, irrespective of wherever they are in their career or in their academia. They say that what is the difference between actually working in industry versus working in an academia like a professor or as a postdoc or as a scientist from in an industry. I just there are many differences, but I just because of the lack of time and all those things, I just say one line: industry works for product. That's it. They want the product in the market. It has to be commercialized. It has to reach to the consumers, and it has to be a big hit for the industry to survive and evolve. So their product is the key. Whereas in academia, what is the aim for an academia? To get a paper in a science, to get a paper in a Nature or a Cell, best journal. That is the ultimate aim. And of course, when you develop a technology, the technology can be licensed to industry. Via the tech transfer department in a university, they license somebody technology developed in a particular lab, professor's lab or something. Then they make money by licensing the technology to industry. So, but essentially the academia works mainly towards publication, discovery research that ends up in publication, and part of which is transferred to the industry for commercialization. So that is the main difference, and there are various other differences within as a kind of submerged in this, but essentially this is the difference.
Right. Yeah, that's a big cultural difference between an industry lab and an academic lab. I believe Sarah mentioned that publication is more difficult in industry lab because there's so much IP and commercialization involved, which is something to think about what you're prioritizing, because certainly having patents and having the industry knowledge, especially if you're looking to move up the ladder in industry, is worth more than papers. But if you have to consider not just what the outcome that you're looking, not just the output, whether it's product or papers, but what is that contributing towards, and whether that's a career path you want. Kind of going off that, I know I saw some of our attendees are bachelors. We talked about PhDs, and I think I saw we have an advisor for undergraduates in microbiology as well. Sarah, could you talk a little bit about what roles are available for a bachelor's degree or a master's? I know you have a master's, but for what levels are available for non-PhD students, and also what is it possible to move up the ranks? Because I saw that people were saying that they'd heard that it's hard to move up the ranks with a bachelor's or a master's, when it sounds like you've done that very, very well.
I've done it, and I'm not, and there are other people who have done it too. Here's the thing, and I really want people to know, not everybody can go get a PhD for a lot of different reasons, and you don't have to. It used to be that you had to, but it's not that way anymore. So if you have a bachelor's degree, the most common job you're going to see is a research assistant. And there's some people who don't want to do that. Do it. Do it for a year at a company you really like. Do it at the company where you want to be the scientist. Get the job, go there, and wow them. Learn everything you can and do it. But if you don't want to do that, that is the most common job out there. There are other jobs. There are jobs, a lot of jobs in quality. And if that's something you're interested in, you definitely have a lot of opportunity in quality. And you need that science background to do that job. Excuse me. You could be a biosafety officer. You could be a process engineer. You could be an operator of the huge industrial equipment that we run at scale. There's a lot of things you can do, but you have to start lower than if you have your PhD. But here's the thing, you'll move up fast. You don't stay at that low level forever. So you'll quickly climb up. Unless you want to stay at that level, some people do that too. And they like their job, so they just stay there at their job.
Thank you so much. For all panelists, can you talk a little bit about the differences between a startup and a large company when it comes to biotech, agtech, food tech? Are there differences in the employees that they look for, characteristics, a difference in the day-to-day?
Yeah, I can take that question because I have worked in a couple of startups as well as a little bit bigger companies also. The key difference to me, as far as a different startup and a kind of a well-established company is that, a startup is somebody is for someone who loves to do A to Z, like everything, and then who have the attitude to learn, even if he or she doesn't know many steps in a given project, or how to manage a project, how to run a project, and all those things, but at least an attitude to learn, to work and learn. You are given a free hand in startups. If you're ready to do, you can do anything, take anything. The amount of money, the amount of infrastructure is very less in the case of startup because it's just starting. But if you have the will, if you have the ability to do that, you can kind of, bring in your novel ideas, novel ways. There are people to listen. When you are able to do a certain project for $50 instead of $100, they're going to listen to you, your ideas. So, the big endorsement is there. In a bigger company, and also you can kind of use many skills you have learned, and also you can learn many skills while in the process. In the case of the big industries or established industries, where all the departments are set, meaning there's a separate department for molecular biology, for example, there's a separate department for cell engineering and one for fermentation, and so on and so forth. So you are kind of allocated to one industry. You go either into molecular biology team or something, you go into fermentation team or something like that. So in the case of the big industries, that the cross the ability to do many things for a single person is limited, because you are kind of working in a certain team, and they have their own goals, they have their own projects to be met, and all those things. And slowly what happens is that if you are not really good enough in establishing yourself and trying to reach out and learn many skills, slowly down the line you get comfortable there. Okay, I have everything said, I do daily the same thing or whatever is told, or a little bit of modifications, and slowly year after year what happens is that you lose the touch. And finally, one day after 10 years, suddenly when the department closes or there's a lack of funding or whatever is that, you see, go back and say, okay, I'm good in this thing, the A. But when somebody asks me to do B, no, I'm not, I'm done. I can't do that because I've lost that. I'm so comfortable. I'm not able to be flexible now after all these years. So that is a little bit of possibility in the case of a big industry. And also there's a lot of big industry hierarchy in the politics, all those things are there. There's a different thing, but this is the key difference between, for me at least, between a startup and a big industry.
So I'm going to
I would like to add one thing.
Oh, yes.
Oh, can I have one thing that's sort of related to the bachelor's master's thing too, in the big industry versus the small startup? If you don't have a PhD, you have to carefully pick your company. it could be a big industry or it could be a startup, but look into the company. And I know people with bachelor level education with very high positions, they pick their company very carefully. You have to see the company's ideas around moving up somebody without that pedigree. But it can be done.
Great. I think that we need to close the webinar soon. I want to make sure that we have a little bit of time for Rachel to send everyone off, but I know we had a lot of questions that we were not able to get to. So we talked a lot about LinkedIn today. I really encourage people, if your question was not answered, to find our panelists and reach out to them on LinkedIn, let them know that you attended the webinar and you had a question that wasn't answered, and I'm sure they'll be really happy to connect with you and answer your question. And thank you, panelists, so much for joining us and for your willingness to share your expertise and insight and advice.
Absolutely. Thank you all for our volunteer speakers today. Myself, I learned a lot I didn't even know. If you would, you will please fill out the post-webinar survey. We really appreciate your feedback. If you fill it out before 5 p.m. Eastern time today, that's in about 3 hours, you'll be eligible to win one of 10 slots for free group coaching offered by Scismic. And with that, I want to thank ASM Education Department and Scismic for hosting this event today. And do reach out to our speakers through LinkedIn. They post some of their links in the chat box. And the recording for this webinar will be posted to your account through ASM Events Online tomorrow. You'll be receiving an email about how to watch the webinar at that time. So thank you all for attending, and we'll see you later.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thanks very much. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you.